Today we have another young Indian woman with us as part of the Voice of the Young series. Hello everyone, good to be with you again. Today we have Vaaridhi Madan. She just finished her bachelor's from Delhi University. Let's hear from her. Over to
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for having me. It's a great honor speaking to you today. Hello, everyone. I am Vaaridhi, and I just graduated. I did my psychology honors from DU, and yeah, and here I am still navigating at life, looking at navigating myself, finding what to do, how to go about things. But yet, like there are some key domains that I'm very much interested in, like social psychology, public policy, social impact. These are few areas that I have worked in, and I'm also looking forward to work in. And I'll probably first try to get some work experience exposure and then continue with my education further. But talking about how I think that would be a good area to start off how I got interested in psychology, because I remember very clearly, distinctly, when I was starting, I was deciding what to do in my undergrad. There were a couple of subjects that I was really interested in, but what made me select and finalize on psychology was uh, because at that time I was reading this fictional novel where they mentioned this one stat that really stood with me and impacted me a lot. That every 8 minutes a farmer suicides in India, and that was very much based in Vidar and the agricultural belt of Vidarbha, and how the loan system, the drought and the famine and everything results in extreme case of poverty, and hence like which leads to a lot of these suicides. And that made me think that this would be one of the subject that would allow me to work in a field like that and do something. Uh, if not, I'm not going to say maybe change the whole thing, but maybe have some little impact towards like a corrective step towards that, something that can have a positive impact and not have a person commit suicide after every 8 minutes. I mean, if you just look at it, it's too much. So that's how I got into it. And doing some internships here and there, I realized, like, I remember very distinctively, I worked after working with a lot of non-profits, that people usually they indulge in these drives and donations where you just give people food, you donate people clothes, things like that, and they're done, and then you show the figures, this is how many people you impacted. But I believe that's not really impact, that's just giving out free things to people. And uh, I think it has negative consequences both ways, to the people and to the community, and to the organization themselves. I don't think that's really doing anything good for the people until unless it's like specific situations like relief work or something. But I think in a larger system, the problems that we try to um, really work for, they are very systemic and structural in nature. So I think the solution that comes should also be structural and systemic, hence.
you.
And I think that is something I realized and I got like hands-on experience with when I started volunteering with this non-profit called Man Foundation. It works for sex workers in Delhi. And there is when we worked, and I worked on projects which dealt with those issues systemically. For example, when we were doing needs assessments and analysis for the community and what they want to work on, we realized that a lot of problem that they were saying, for example, access to education, health, or some kind of employment, the problem why they're not able to access comes back because they're so like marginalized in the process that they don't have their basic identity cards and documents like Aadhaar card. They just don't have that.
No.
And to have that, the process like for them is not simple because they don't have birth certificate. They don't have any like ration pani bill to prove that they're citizens of that place, and hence like the circle of marginalization just continues for them. And to break that, we had to strategize projects where we could bring in those things and provide that to them. And to just get that basic Aadhaar card for around like 100 people, it took us for 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the level of, I would say, problem in the system, in the sense that we have those policies that safeguard them. Recently, like with the help of this example, I'd like to explain how recently
Please.
there was this Supreme Court judgment regarding giving those kind of documents and rights, identity rights to the sex workers by the Supreme Court, and they told NACO to execute them and provide all these services. And uh, and when we reached out to NACO to get those help and see that these are the people we have who want to get these things done, there was no help at all, even
Hmm.
though were like they were asked by the Supreme Court, which is the apex body, judicial body of the country. Still, there was this kind of lackadaisical approach towards the issue.
Hmm.
So I think in implementation and provision of those big policies that are created at a very apex level to the very grassroots, I think we do require these people, organizations, collectives, non-profits, whatever you call them, where people proactively try to get what they deserve and what rights they have. Because I think as institutions, really big institutions, I think have failed us. Otherwise, a lot of the issues that we see today, people are working on, they were started like about a century or at least like 70, 50 years ago.
Right.
And since some projections have been made that, in the 21st centuries, no issues would remain, or like such kind of proclaims were made. But I think those really, the things have not trickled down to the grassroots. And we require us, uh, people at the grassroots, to become proactive, to demand those things and really get them. It's only then I think there would be some level of parity. 100%, I don't know still if we would reach where we proclaim to be.
Okay, so you said that, it was that news item that triggered
Mhm.
your interest in psychology. But were you always interested in helping others?
I think somewhere intrinsically I was never really actively realized once I worked there.
Okay.
So once I work, it gave me an exposure, and it also, so a lot of times I think you like something, and once you start doing, you realize it's not for you. But once I started doing it, I realized, okay, I like it even more.
Okay.
It's something that matches with me.
Okay, but this Man Foundation, this is, of course, since you are in Delhi and you were going to college in Delhi, obviously you can't work with farmers in Vidarbha. But how is it related in your mind, helping uh, marginalized women in Delhi? Is it the same as marginalized farmers in a way, or what's the connection in your mind?
I think the connection is I'm also very interested in, as you said, marginalized, working with groups of people who are marginalized. And also, I think academically, I've tried to understand how psychologically they operate and how that marginalization sort of happens,
Hmm.
to understand how help can be provided, or like there can be much better inclusion and integration. So in my head, how the both are connected, as you said correctly, is the sense of marginalities that they experience,
Mhm.
and how like they're always at a disadvantaged
Mhm.
position compared to other people in the society.
So how is it your problem? They're marginalized. How is it your problem? That's what I'm asking. Why is it your problem? I'm happy that it is your problem. Okay. But I'm asking, why is it your problem?
That's a question my mom always asks me. That why does that bother you?
Oh,
But I don't have a very concrete answer. Otherwise, I think I would have given that to my family
oh,
to make them quiet.
yeah.
But I don't know. I think that that sense in or inherent sense of injustice, it's like that idea is driven with a sense of injustice and unfairness. I think as a society we're always at different levels of groups, like class groups, caste groups, different. I think a society can never be homogeneous in that sense. It's always heterogeneous. But lately what I think we have experienced is this extreme division between, as we traditionally call, the haves and the have nots,
Mhm.
basically. And that extreme division and more gapping between the two groups, and people who are worsen off, continuously getting worsen off. I think that is what really irks me. Why? I don't know.
No.
But that whole idea of this systemic injustice to these group of people, different communities, it's just highly unsettling.
Okay.
Uh,
Let
yeah.
me give you a thought and see whether you agree with it or disagree with it. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is a hypothesis, okay? Okay. Perhaps the gap was there in the old days, but there was no way available to young people who were motivated to reduce the gap. But today, because of greater awareness, greater technology, and greater means, it's possible for young people to reduce some of that gap. And so they are more irked by it because it's possible to do something about it. If it was not possible to do something about it, it would be sheer frustration. But now this is my hypothesis. Now it's not sheer frustration because you can actually talk to somebody and get something done. So what do you think of this hypothesis?
I first have a question. When you say in old times, how old are you going back?
100 years.
Okay.
100
I
years, 60 years, 70 years,
Hmm.
anything that's like my age. In
Okay.
my generation, when we were your age, we were not able to do these things. And so we did have some people who tried to take some action against injustice, social injustice and all. And but I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about you. So what we did or what we didn't do is not the point here. Point is the hypothesis that today the young people have many more means than people had, say, let's say 60, 50, 60 years ago. And maybe that's why more people are involved. It's a hypothesis. I'm not saying I
Right.
believe it. I'm just saying it's a hypothesis. So what do you think of
Right.
that hypothesis?
I think it doesn't have 100% merit to it, of course.
Yeah.
I think the part that where you said that because people have means, that is why they're more because they have channels of doing things. I think that's not true, because the point where I was initially irked or have been irked, I never realized that these channels exist for me.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I thought that the only way to change is to work in an NGO or to have an NGO. And at that point, I knew that it's not an easy task. You require a lot of capital and a lot of your own side of privilege to operate something like that. Right? It's only later and recently, after I've graduated and seen how the market works, that I know these uh, social impact sector and whole thing is emerging out, and where you can actually look after yourself and as well as do these things at the same time. So I think the irking part always remains, but yes, as you said, maybe when there were no means available to channelize that, people would have told themselves that okay, let's just focus on our own personal lives and personal responsibilities, families and whatever, because you can't deal with both of them. But and I think one another thing that I mentioned before, if you I think like uh, this is something in India we've seen more. I don't know how like you're the economist, how tangibly true this is, but I think it's after the 1990s where at least economically we've seen the gap divide much more than it
Yes.
was
Yes.
before.
There's no
Yeah.
question about that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, and that is how where I said that marginalities in all senses, we think a lot of them are decreasing because there's active work on it. Of course, a lot of them are, but the irony or the dichotomy there like remains, that also they're increasing also continuously with different modes of capitalism or whatever at work. So I think the problem has aggravated, channels are given, so more people are also contributing towards it. So I think it's both ways.
Okay, wonderful. Your explanation is very articulate, I must say. I don't remember being so articulate at your age. Perhaps the younger generation is smarter and harder working than we were. It certainly seems like that. Okay, good. So,
Okay.
how was your experience working for the NGO, Man Foundation,
I think
overall?
I think at all levels it was fantastic.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of the experience, the exposure, understanding the community from the community lens, implementing all of that. For example, how in psychology, in theory, we learn about empathy and seeing people from that kind of lens and understanding, yet at the same time remaining analytical because you're there to solve an issue.
Yeah.
So implying that, applying that, and all that. And also I think from an organizational point of view, working and also doing multiple jobs, because in a relatively new NGO, you don't have designated work positions. Even as
No,
a volunteer, you just have to do a lot of work,
right,
whatever comes at you.
right,
So
right.
I think that also gave me a lot of exposure to do things that I never thought I would,
Yeah.
and never imagined I
Like, could you
would be
give an
interested in.
example? Could you?
Like, for example, I never thought I'd do HR, organizational work, so I did. And when you think of an NGO, that's not a work you imagine you'd be doing. You think of field work, you think of project planning, project management, but then also at the same time, you have to do organizational development. You also do recruitment and hiring. So those kind of things, communication, social media, these things
Hmm.
also have to be done at the same time.
Okay, wonderful. And what's your overall view of the next decade for you or for your friends? And how is it? How do you feel about it? It's a tough question, but
It
just
is.
give us some idea of your own sense of optimism or negative pessimism. What is it that you feel?
Hmm. I think inherently I'm a very critical person, but I often use optimism as a way to drive myself,
Okay.
because you need that vision and the optimism to achieve that, to really work for it. Cynicism is not going to help in that sense, but at the same time you do require that critical lens to realize where you're lacking and where things around you are lacking, where you need to put in more focus. But I think my vision, or like how I see people around me and myself, um so it's again a dichotomous situation, because we see people really driven. I see myself also driven with all the impact making, and also as I said, I would call it an industry because it's coming up as one. It's really blooming and people are really working towards it. A lot of people are becoming more conscious, more sensitive and understanding of these diversities, and trying to be more inclusive and everything. But also what really irks me, or like unsettles me at the same time, is this rise of tokenism, and how people show a lot of numbers, say a lot of things, do a lot of things, but deep down inside or in some implicit ways,
Yeah.
that is not the same with what they do. So as much as I appreciate this new wave of more conscious people in every way is possible, climate, economy, personal lives,
Mhm.
social, at the same time, I feel a lot of these things are being done and said for the sake of it,
Okay.
for the popularity of it.
Yeah.
And people don't realize deep down what it means about what they say.
Okay.
And that is my concern, that I think if people really do it for because of the essence of it, it would have a much more deeper impact and larger impact than what we see.
Okay. Yeah. Tokenism is a well-known problem that,
Yeah.
it's just uh, whitewash. It's just a
Yeah.
greenwash or a whitewash. It's not
Yeah.
real. Okay. It's just
Yeah.
appearances.
And I see that as a very major issue, because on the face of it, you show these numbers, these reports of how things are improving, but then it seems like as a society we're stagnant. And then you also don't have a clear cut enemy or an issue to work at, because everything says the problem solved.
Well,
So what do you target at?
you are going to help solve the problem. Let me say, you are an optimistic doer. You are going to attack these problems, and we hope to see many solutions coming from you. And I'm sure your friends and your cohort, you are not alone. I'm sure there are others who feel like you.
Definitely.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'm sure India's future is a bit brighter because of people like you. And that's it for the time being. Let's see. You have anything last few words to say?
No, I think a lot's been said. But of course, there are a lot of things to work on. Uh, but I don't have anything to add to that. I think
Okay.
it's just that we start doing, then
Okay, fine.
okay.
I get your message. Okay, that don't don't pretend, do it really and do it.
Yeah,
Don't just do it for the heck of doing it and the popularity and putting it on your CV. Do it
true.
because you want to do it. Okay.
Absolutely.
And make it work. That is possible these days, with great effort, of course, to make it
Yes,
work.
I think things are, I think in that sense, hopeful because even as I said, in this industry, there is funding now coming. People have it as a focus. There are people coming. So in that sense, I think it is hopeful.
Okay. Let's end on that hopeful note and optimistic note. And maybe we'll see you in a year and see how things are going with you. Let's say bye to our viewers. Bye for now. I'll be back with another expert or another young Indian next time, or another young non-Indian also. We want to be international. So bye for now. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye bye.